Damn it all. I should have balanced that checkbook last week. Now look at this mess. Wells Fargo's website is telling me my balance is, well, let's just say it's a whole lot less than it should be. A lot less. My entire Social Security check? Gone. And then some. Now, I know what you're thinking, honey. Helen, you're 72. Maybe your memory isn't what it used to be. And you wouldn't be entirely wrong, sweetie. I do misplace my reading glasses more often than I care to admit, but I know damn well how much money I had in that account. I've been managing my own finances since I was barely old enough to wear lipstick. Back in my day, we didn't have all this fancy schmancy online banking. We had checkbooks and reconciliations, and we knew where every single penny went. I took a sip of my Earl Grey, the fragrant steam doing little to soothe my rising anxiety. Maybe it was a mistake, a clerical error. Banks make mistakes, don't they? Although back in my day, you rarely ever saw that. People took pride in their work. Now it's all automated this and algorithm that. I preferred when you could walk in and talk to a real person. I clicked around the Wells Fargo site, trying to find some kind of explanation. Recent transactions, transfers, withdrawals, the usual. Nothing looked out of place, at least not at first glance. My monthly payments for the condo association, my small contribution to the church, the automatic payment to Netflix so I could watch those silly British baking shows. Normal, normal, normal. Then I saw it. A series of Zelle transfers, large ones, to names I didn't recognize. Names like Diamond Diva 22 and Cash King 99. The amounts were outrageous, hundreds of dollars at a time, repeatedly. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a mistake. This was theft. Someone had stolen my money. My first instinct was to call the bank, but then a chilling thought crept into my mind. Who would do this? Who would have access to my account information, my password, my security questions? I live alone. I'm a widow. My husband, bless his heart, passed away 5 years ago. And I'm quite careful. I shred everything with my personal information on it. So, who? Then it hit me. My granddaughter, Emily. Sweet, beautiful Emily. The apple of my eye. The one I practically raised after her mother. Well, that's a story for another time. Emily knows my birthday. She knows my mother's maiden name. She knows the name of my first pet. All those silly security questions that the banks use. I helped her set up her first email account, for heaven's sake. Of course she would know those answers. But no, I couldn't believe it. Not Emily. I'd given her everything. Paid for her college, helped her with her rent when she was struggling to find a job, even bought her that ridiculous designer handbag she just had to have. No, it had to be a mistake. Maybe someone had hacked my account. It happens all the time, doesn't it? The news is full of these scam artists and identity thieves. I sighed, rubbing my temples. The stress was giving me a headache. And to top it all off, that infernal noise was driving me batty. Jerry, my retired neighbor across the hall, was at it again. That man and his scanner. He's been digitizing his entire life's collection of documents for the past 6 months. Every day, all day, that incessant whirring and beeping fills the hallway. Legal documents, tax returns, old love letters from his deceased wife. The man is obsessed. You'd think he was preparing for some kind of historical archive. Honestly, it's enough to drive a sane woman mad. I slammed my laptop shut. I needed to clear my head. Maybe if I called the bank, they could trace the transfers, tell me where the money went. Then I could prove it wasn't Emily. I needed to prove it wasn't Emily. The thought of her betraying me like that, it was unbearable. As I reached for the phone, Jerry's scanner kicked into high gear again, the noise vibrating through the walls.
The rhythmic hum seemed to mock me, a constant reminder of the chaos and betrayal swirling in my own life. I picked up the phone, my hand shaking slightly. I had to know. I had to find out what was going on. But deep down, a cold, hard knot of dread was forming in my stomach. If it wasn't Emily, then who?
Damn this arthritic hand. It trembled something awful as I dialed First Atlanta Bank. Waiting for them to pick up felt like an eternity. You know how it is, sweetie. On hold, listening to that god-awful music, thinking the worst. Finally, a bright, chirpy voice answered. First Atlanta Bank, this is Tiffany. How can I help you today? I took a deep breath. Yes, hello, Tiffany. My name is Helen Parker, and I need to inquire about some recent, unusual activity on my accounts. I tried to keep my voice steady, but a tremor snuck in anyway. Damn nerves. Certainly, Mrs. Parker. Can you please verify the last 4 digits of your social security number? The whole process felt like a bureaucratic dance. Account numbers, addresses, dates of birth, all the information they already had but needed me to regurgitate anyway. You know how it is, sweetie. Just going through the motions. Finally, Tiffany said, "All right, Mrs. Parker, I have your account information here. Can you specify which account you're referring to and the nature of the unusual activity?" All of them, Tiffany. Savings, checking, even my CD. There are several transfers I don't recognize, and it's a substantial amount of money. There was a pause. I could practically hear Tiffany tapping away at her keyboard. Then she said, "Okay, Mrs. Parker, I see the transfers you're referring to. They appear to be authorized transfers made through online banking." Authorized? But I didn't authorize them. I haven't touched my online banking in months. Back in my day, we just used a checkbook and called it a day. None of this fancy technology. I understand, Mrs. Parker. I can see that the transfers were made to several different accounts. Can you tell me where the money went? I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. I'm afraid I can't disclose that information over the phone, Mrs. Parker, for security reasons. Security reasons? My money is disappearing and you're telling me about security reasons? That's a load of bull, sweetie. My voice was rising now, the fear and frustration boiling over. I apologize, Mrs. Parker, but I can schedule an appointment for you to come into the branch and speak with a personal banker. They can access that information and discuss it with you in person. Fine, I snapped. Schedule me for the first available appointment and tell them to have the information ready. I don't want to waste my time or theirs. The next morning, I dressed in my best floral dress, the one I usually wore to church on Sundays. If I was going to war, I was going to war looking respectable. I dabbed on a bit of lipstick, trying to hide the worry lines etched around my mouth. The First Atlanta Bank was bustling with activity. Young bucks in suits rushing around, soccer moms juggling screaming toddlers, and a poor teller trying to handle it all with a forced smile. I waited in line, tapping my foot impatiently. When I finally reached the counter, the young man behind it barely made eye contact. "Next," he barked, already shuffling papers. "I have an appointment," I said, trying to project authority. "Respect your elders, for crying out loud." He glanced up, his eyes glazed over. "Name? Helen Parker." He typed something into his computer. "Okay, Mrs. Parker, have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." Another wait, more forced smiles. Finally, a woman in a sensible pantsuit called my name. She led me to a small, sterile office. "Mrs. Parker, I'm Susan, your personal banker. How can I help you today?" I explained the situation again, the missing funds, the unauthorized transfers. Susan listened patiently, nodding occasionally. Then she pulled up my account information on her computer screen. I see the transfers you're referring to, Mrs. Parker. As Tiffany mentioned, they were authorized. But I didn't authorize them. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Susan frowned. According to our records, your granddaughter, Emily, was added as a co-owner to all of your accounts several weeks ago. She would have the authority to make these transfers. The room seemed to spin. Emily? Emily? My sweet, precious granddaughter? That's impossible. I stammered. Emily wouldn't do that. She couldn't. Susan pointed to the screen. I'm sorry, Mrs. Parker, but it's right here in the system. The paperwork was notarized. Notarized? But when? By whom? Susan scrolled down. According to this, the paperwork was notarized on July 12th by Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson? I didn't know any Mr. Henderson. Who in the hell was Mr. Henderson? A wave of nausea washed over me. My head was pounding. My hands were shaking. How could Emily do this to me? She knew I was on a fixed income. She knew how much I struggled to make ends meet. And who was this Mr. Henderson? This was a snake oil salesman situation. The old folks are the first to be scammed. This felt like a movie. The betrayal, the sheer audacity of it all. It was too much to process. How could Emily do this to me? And who is Mr. Henderson?
Well, screw that. I drove straight over to Emily's. You know, that cute little bungalow I helped her buy last year on Peachtree, bless her heart. All that climbing in and out of my Buick with my arthritis acting up. I swear, sometimes I think these new cars are designed to punish the elderly. Anyway, I pulled up, marched right onto that porch, the one I picked out the rocking chairs for, I might add, and practically banged down the door. Lord, I was seeing red, just seeing red, sweeties. She answered, finally, looking all doe-eyed and innocent like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. Grandma, what's wrong? You look awful. Awful? Awful? Honey, I was about to become awful. Emily, I said, my voice trembling, we need to talk. Right now. I pushed past her and into the living room. It was all Pottery Barn catalogs and scented candles. Back in my day, we had furniture that lasted longer than a season, and candles that smelled like beeswax, not ocean breeze. But I digress. I needed to stay focused. What is it, Grandma? She asked, her voice all sugary sweet. You're scaring me. Scared? You're scared? You should be, sweetie pie. You just should be. I plunked myself down on her ridiculously oversized couch, the one I picked out the rocking chairs for, I might add, and practically banged down the door. Lord, I was seeing red, just seeing red, sweeties. She answered, finally, looking all doe-eyed and innocent like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. Grandma, what's wrong? You look awful. Awful? Awful? Honey, I was about to become awful. Emily, I said, my voice trembling, we need to talk. Right now. I pushed past her and into the living room. It was all Pottery Barn catalogs and scented candles. Back in my day, we had furniture that lasted longer than a season and candles that smelled like beeswax, not ocean breeze. But I digress. I needed to stay focused. What is it, Grandma? She asked, her voice all sugary sweet. You're scaring me. Scared? You're scared? You should be, sweetie pie. You just should be. I plunked myself down on her ridiculously oversized couch, the one I picked out the rocking chairs for, I might add, and she started to tear up. Oh, the theatrics. Grandma, I don't know what you're talking about. I would never, ever do anything to hurt you. You know that. Someone must be trying to frame me. Framed? frame her. This was getting better and better. Framed, you say? And who, pray tell, would frame you, Emily? Who would have access to my accounts, my social security number, all that private information? Who, besides the person I practically raised, the person I trusted more than my own shadow? She started sobbing now. Big, heaving sobs. I swear, this girl could win an Oscar. Grandma, please believe me. I swear I don't know anything about this. Maybe your memory is failing you. You've been a little forgetful lately, haven't you? Maybe you authorized those transfers and just don't remember? The nerve. The unmitigated nerve. My memory is just fine, Emily. Just fine. I remember every single penny I ever spent on you, every late-night drive to soccer practice, every overpriced prom dress. My memory is not the problem here. The problem is the signature on that paperwork. The problem is this Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson? I don't know any Mr. Henderson. She squeezed out between sobs. Oh, really? Because someone named Mr. Henderson notarized the documents that allowed you to steal my money. So either you're lying or someone is using your name. Which is it, Emily? She wouldn't meet my eyes. That was always her tell. When Emily was lying, she couldn't look you straight in the face. Instead, she fiddled with her iPhone, a brand new rose gold one, suspiciously. Grandma, please believe me. I'm being set up. I don't know who's doing this, but I promise you I had nothing to do with it. As she was talking, I noticed her thumb subtly slide across the screen of her iPhone. She was texting someone. Who was she texting? Was she texting Mr. Henderson? Was she texting some accomplice? Emily, put the phone down, I commanded. What? I'm calling my mom, she stammered. Bullshit. You are not calling your mother. Show me your phone. She clutched it to her chest like it was a winning lottery ticket. No, it's private. Private? What could possibly be private that you can't show your own grandmother? Unless you're hiding something. I stood up, my arthritis be damned. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I gave you everything, Emily, everything, and this is how you repay me? By stealing my identity? By leaving me penniless? She just kept crying, denying, and clutching that damn phone. My blood was boiling. How could she be so convincing? How could she look me in the eye and lie so blatantly? But something wasn't adding up. Was she really capable of this? Or was someone else pulling the strings, using Emily as a pawn? Was she truly being framed? I tell you what, that little performance she put on, it almost made me think twice. But then I remembered my gut feeling. My grandma sense was tingling, and something told me this was far from over. Was Emily lying, or is someone else involved?
Lord, give me strength, I muttered, more to myself than anyone. I took a deep breath, trying to regain some semblance of composure. All right, sweetie, I said, forcing a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. All right, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm just being an old worrywart. Emily's face brightened, and she dabbed at her eyes with the back of her hand. Oh, Grandma, you believe me? Honey, I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness, of course I believe you. You're my granddaughter. Who else would I believe? Inside, my mind was racing. I needed to play this smart. I couldn't just accuse her outright without proof. I had to get her to incriminate herself. But how? Tell you what, I continued, reaching for my Earl Grey tea tin on the side table. Let's have a nice cup of tea, and we can talk this all through, calmly. No more accusations, no more tears. Just you and me, like the old days. As I busied myself with the tea, I subtly pressed the record button on the voice recorder I'd stashed inside the tin, a little gadget I picked up at that Brookstone place in the mall. seemed a bit James Bond, even for me. But a girl's gotta do what a girl's gotta do, right? That sounds nice, Grandma, Emily said, but I noticed she didn't put her phone down. She just kept fiddling with it, as if expecting a message. I poured us each a cup, the fragrant steam filling the air. Now, Emily, I said, handing her a cup, let's talk about these discrepancies in my account. I know finances can be confusing. Maybe there was just a simple mistake, a clerical error at Wells Fargo, perhaps. She took a sip of her tea, her eyes darting around the room. Yeah, maybe, she said vaguely. Things happen, right? Right, I agreed. Things happen. But these things, they seem to be happening a lot lately, and they always seem to involve large sums of money. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Like that withdrawal last month? The one for, what was it? $10,000? She choked on her tea. I don't remember that, she stammered. Oh, come now, sweetie. Surely you remember a $10,000 withdrawal. That's not exactly pocket change, even in this day and age, especially on a fixed income like mine. I sipped my tea, watching her carefully. Perhaps you could refresh my memory. Tell me what that money was for. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I think it was for some investments. I was trying to help you, Grandma, make your money grow. Investments? Without my knowledge? Without my permission? That's awfully generous of you, Emily. But you know I'm not a fan of investments, especially after what happened back in '98 with that snake oil salesman, remember? Said he was going to make me a millionaire and vanished with every penny I had? Emily avoided my gaze. I just thought, you could use a little extra cash with everything going up these days. And where did you invest this money, dear? I pressed, my voice still calm, almost too calm. In what exactly? She hesitated, then mumbled something about stocks and bonds. Stocks and bonds, huh? Well, isn't that interesting? Because according to my statements, there haven't been any new investments made in my name. In fact, my account is steadily dwindling, almost as if someone is siphoning money out of it. Emily's eyes widened, and she started to cry again. Grandma, please, you're not listening to me. I didn't do anything, I swear. Then who did, Emily? Who is stealing my money? I leaned forward, my gaze unwavering. Tell me, and I might just believe you. She just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't know. I really don't. The silence stretched between us, thick with suspicion and distrust. I knew she was lying. I could feel it in my bones, but I couldn't prove it. Not yet. All right, Emily, I said, sighing heavily. I'm tired. Let's just leave it for now. But I'm going to need you to give me your bank statements for review so I can check whether or not the money was transferred to your account. Sure, Grandma, I'll give them to you tomorrow. I knew that even with my little tea tin recorder, I hadn't gotten anything concrete. Everything she said was so vague, so easily deniable. It was like she was anticipating every move I made. I stared out the window, watching the birds flitting about in the garden. I needed more evidence. I needed something solid, something undeniable, because right now, it was just her word against mine. And in this day and age, honey, who's going to believe an old lady like me? But one thing for sure, I wasn't going to let her get away with this, not without a fight. Can Helen gather enough evidence to expose the truth?
Lord have mercy. I swear, sometimes I feel like I'm playing chess with a pigeon. That girl, Emily, honey, she's got the innocent act down pat. But I wasn't born yesterday, and I certainly didn't survive 50 years in the accounting game by being gullible. The next morning, dressed in my Sunday best, a floral dress that hid my support hose, thank you Macy's, and my favorite pearl necklace, I marched myself down to First Atlanta Bank. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them sitting at home, sipping Earl Grey and feeling sorry for myself. Of course, the drive over was a circus. Atlanta traffic is a special kind of hell, even for an old broad like me. The young bucks in their fancy cars think they own the road, and don't even get me started on the construction. Seemed like they were tearing up Peachtree Street just to spite me. I finally parked, thank heavens for handicap parking, and hobbled inside. The air conditioning hit me like a wall, and for a moment I just stood there blinking like an eyewall. Banks these days, all marble and chrome. Back in my day, a bank felt like a safe place, not a modern art museum. I made my way to the customer service desk, where a young woman with bright pink hair and enough piercings to set off a metal detector greeted me. "How can I help you, ma'am?" "I need to speak to a manager," I said, my voice firm. "It's about my accounts." She gave me a look that said, "Another confused old lady," but she led me to a glass-walled office nonetheless. Inside, a man in a crisp blue suit, name tag read Mr. Peterson, was waiting. He had that practiced, sympathetic look on him that I've seen 1,000 times, the one that says, "I'm listening, but I'm not really hearing." "Mrs. Parker, please have a seat," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Thank you," I said, carefully lowering myself into it. My arthritis was acting up something fierce today, and every movement was a reminder of my age. But I wasn't going to let that show, not to this young whippersnapper. "So, Mrs. Parker, what can I do for you today?" he asked, his voice smooth and professional. I took a deep breath, preparing for the performance of a lifetime. "Well, Mr. Peterson," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "I'm a little confused about my accounts. You see, my granddaughter, Emily, has been helping me with my finances, and I just wanted to make sure everything was in order." I put a little extra waver in my voice, hoping to sell the frail old lady act. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Of course, Mrs. Parker, I understand. What exactly are you concerned about?" "Well," I said, furrowing my brow, "I seem to recall signing some papers, something about Emily being a co-owner or something like that. My memory isn't what it used to be, you know." I tapped my temple with a shaky hand. "I just wanted to double check, make sure everything is as it should be. Maybe get a copy of those papers." He smiled, a practiced, reassuring smile. "Certainly, Mrs. Parker. Let me pull up your account information." He turned to his computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard. After a moment, he turned back to me. "Yes, Mrs. Parker, I see here that Emily is indeed listed as a co-owner on your accounts. I can assure you that all the paperwork is in order. Everything was properly signed and notarized." My heart sunk. Notarized. Damn it. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't remember. I mean, I trust Emily, of course, but, well, you know how it is. An old woman alone in the world." I trailed off, hoping he'd offer some reassurance, some loophole, something. He sighed, a long, drawn-out sigh that made me want to smack him. "Mrs. Parker, I understand your concerns, but I can assure you that everything is perfectly legal and above board. Emily has full access to the accounts as a co-owner." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Full access. She had the legal right to bleed me dry. "Is there anything else I can help you with, Mrs. Parker?" he asked, his voice edging toward impatience. I shook my head slowly, my mind reeling. "No," I said, my voice flat. "No, I guess not." I stood up, my knees protesting with every movement. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Peterson." As I walked out of the bank, the weight of the situation crashed down on me. I felt like I was drowning. Emily had played me. She had covered her tracks. She had made it look like I had willingly given her control of my savings accounts. I was so focused on catching her in the act, on getting concrete proof, that I hadn't considered the possibility that she had already outmaneuvered me. She had gotten the bank on her side. She had made everything official. I reached my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. I sat there for a moment, staring blankly at the steering wheel, wondering what to do next. I needed to find another way. The bank was a dead end. My little recorder hadn't gotten me anything. Emily was too careful. Was I running out of options?
Well, ain't that just a kick in the teeth? I muttered to myself as I slammed the front door shut. I needed a plan, and I needed it now. Sitting on the porch with my Earl Grey wasn't gonna cut it. I needed someone who knew about money, about secrets, about the kind of crap Emily was pulling. The thought hit me like a bolt of lightning. A forensic accountant. Someone who could follow the money, trace every transaction, see where my hard-earned dollars were going. Someone who could dig up the dirt that Emily was trying so hard to bury. I grabbed my phone, a slightly battered iPhone 8. I hadn't seen the need to upgrade, unlike some people I knew, and started searching. Forensic Accountant, Atlanta. The results popped up. A list of names and firms that sounded about as exciting as watching paint dry. I needed someone sharp. Someone who wouldn't be intimidated by a young whippersnapper like Emily. Someone with a bit of fire. After what felt like hours of sifting through websites and reviews, one name stood out. Robert Miller, CPA, CFE. The website was simple. No fancy graphics or cheesy testimonials, just a plain listing of his qualifications and experience. But there was something about his no-nonsense approach that appealed to me. I dialed the number, my heart pounding in my chest. A gruff voice answered, "Miller Accounting, how can I help you?" Mr. Miller, I need your help." I explained my situation, leaving out some of the more emotional details. I just told him that my granddaughter had gotten access to my accounts, and I suspected she was mishandling my funds. He listened patiently, without interrupting. When I was finished, he said, "Mrs. Parker, this sounds like a serious matter. I'd be happy to meet with you and discuss your options. Can you come by my office tomorrow morning?" "Yes, absolutely," I said, relief washing over me. "Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you so much." The next morning, I drove to Mr. Miller's office, a small, unassuming building in a slightly run-down part of town. It wasn't exactly what I expected, but I figured that fancy offices didn't necessarily mean better results. Mr. Miller himself was a man in his late 50s with a receding hairline and a serious demeanor. He listened intently as I recounted the whole story, from Emily's initial charm offensive to my discovery of the joint account and the bank's dismissive attitude. "So you suspect your granddaughter is stealing from you, but you don't have any concrete proof?" he asked, his eyes narrowed. "Not yet," I admitted, "but I know it's happening. I can feel it in my bones." He nodded slowly. "Feelings aren't enough, Mrs. Parker. We need evidence. We need to follow the money." That's exactly what I wanted to hear. "What do you suggest?" "I specialize in tracing financial transactions, uncovering fraud, and reconstructing financial records. In your case, we'll need to examine your bank statements, credit card bills, and any other financial documents you have. We'll also need to look into Emily's financial activity, if possible." "How can we do that?" I asked, feeling a surge of hope. "She's very careful. She uses encrypted messaging apps and VPNs to cover her tracks. She's tech-savvy, that girl." Mr. Miller leaned back in his chair. "That makes things more challenging, but not impossible. We can try to subpoena her financial records, but that would require a court order and a lot of time. A quicker option is to try to trace her digital footprint, see where she's spending the money, who she's communicating with, what websites she's visiting." "Can you do that?" I asked skeptically. He smiled, a rare and fleeting expression. "I have my ways, Mrs. Parker. I have my ways. I'm not just an accountant, honey. I know my way around the internet, too." He explained that he would need access to my computer and phone to look for any clues, any traces of Emily's activity. He warned me that it would be a long and painstaking process, and there were no guarantees of success. But I didn't care. I was willing to try anything. I was tired of feeling helpless, of being played for a fool. It was time to fight back. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Mr. Miller and his team worked tirelessly, poring over my financial records, analyzing Emily's online activity, and digging into her past. I felt like I was living in a spy movie, watching as they uncovered layer after layer of deception. It turned out Emily was even more cunning than I had imagined. She had been using a complex network of shell corporations and offshore accounts to hide her ill-gotten gains. She was also communicating with a group of shady characters, people with criminal records and a history of financial fraud. The anger inside me grew with each new revelation. This wasn't just a case of a spoiled granddaughter taking advantage of her grandma. This was a full-blown criminal enterprise. But as Mr. Miller delved deeper, he hit a wall. Emily's use of encrypted messaging and VPNs made it incredibly difficult to track her online activity. She was like a ghost, leaving no trace behind. I'd made the mistake of getting her that damn subscription to one of those cloud storage places for her birthday. Now she was using it to cloak herself. Mr. Miller looked frustrated. "She's good, Mrs. Parker. I'll give her that. She knows how to cover her tracks. It's like she's been training for this." I felt a familiar wave of despair wash over me. Was I running out of options again? Had Emily outsmarted me once and for all? How could I outsmart Emily's digital defenses?
Lord, give me strength. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, there she was, Emily, my sweet little viper, standing on my porch with that sickly sweet smile plastered across her face. The stench of her overly expensive perfume, something floral and cloying, wafted over me as she approached. I swear, she probably bought the whole bottle at Bloomingdale's, using my damn credit card, no doubt. "Grandma, darling," she chirped, her voice dripping with fake affection. "How are you feeling today?" I just looked at her, my eyes narrowed. "Peachy keen, Emily. Just peachy keen. Especially now that you're here." I made sure the sarcasm was thick enough to cut with a knife. She either didn't notice or chose to ignore it. Emily breezed past me into the house, acting like she owned the place, which, frankly, she probably thought she did. She settled herself on the sofa, crossing her legs and smoothing down her designer dress. I tell you, back in my day, young women earned their keep before flaunting their wealth like that. "I just wanted to pop by and see how you were doing," she continued, her eyes darting around the room, taking in every detail, "and to talk about your will." My blood ran cold. Of course, it always came back to the money, didn't it? "My will? What about it, sweetie?" I asked, feigning innocence. "I thought everything was settled years ago." "Well, yes, Grandma, but things change, don't they?" She pulled a sleek black leather folder out of her oversized purse, probably a Gucci, knowing her. Inside were several documents, neatly arranged. I had my lawyer draw up some revisions, just to simplify things, Streamline the process for when, well, Simplify? I repeated, my voice rising slightly. What exactly needs simplifying, Emily? I thought I made it perfectly clear how I wanted my estate to be divided. She gave me that innocent, wide-eyed look that used to fool me. Oh, it's all the same, Grandma. Just some minor adjustments. Legal jargon, really. It just makes things easier for me to manage everything when the time comes. Less of a headache, you see. A headache for her, maybe. A complete and utter disaster for me if I wasn't careful. I took the folder from her, my hands trembling slightly. The pages were filled with legal terminology that swam before my eyes. It might as well have been written in Klingon. But one thing was clear. Emily was pushing me to sign something that would undoubtedly benefit her and screw me over in the long run. I could feel it in my bones, an old woman's intuition. I don't understand any of this, Emily, I said, handing the folder back to her. It's all gobbledygook to me. I'll need to have Mr. Miller look it over. Her smile faltered for a split second, just enough for me to catch it. Mr. Miller? Why would you need him? He's just a financial advisor, Grandma. This is a legal matter. He's a smart man, Emily, and I trust him. He knows my finances inside and out. If anyone can decipher this mess, it's him. Besides, he helped me set up that darned VPN service to try and stop those robocalls about my car warranty. So I owe him one. I wasn't about to tell her that he was also digging into her shady dealings. That would be like showing my hand in a poker game. She sighed dramatically, rolling her eyes. Grandma, you're being difficult. This is just a formality. It's for your own good. Don't you trust me? Trust her? After everything she'd done? After she'd stolen my identity, drained my bank accounts, and turned my life upside down? The gall of this girl. Of course I trust you, sweetie. Just like I trust a snake oil salesman selling miracle cures. But even a trusting old lady like me needs to dot her I's and cross her T's. You understand, don't you, honey? She stared at me, her eyes hardening. The mask of sweetness was starting to crack. Fine, Grandma, if that's what you want, but don't say I didn't try to make things easier for you. She gathered her things, her movements jerky and impatient. As she reached the door, she turned back to me, her voice dangerously low. Just think about it, Grandma. Time is ticking. And with that, she was gone, leaving me standing there, clutching my chest, my heart pounding in my ears. I watched as her fancy little sports car sped down the driveway, a cloud of dust and exhaust hanging in the air. Damn her. Damn her to hell. She thought she had me cornered. She thought she could manipulate me with her crocodile tears and her empty promises. She thought I was just a senile old woman ripe for the pickin'. But she was wrong. So wrong. I had a plan that was slowly but surely taking shape. And Emily, my dear, sweet, conniving granddaughter, was about to learn what Grandma's revenge really meant. Was I about to fall for her trap and sign my life away?
Well, I wasn't about to just sit there and let her win, now was I? I've survived worse than a spoiled granddaughter with a penchant for fraud. I poured myself a stiff Earl Grey, extra bergamot this time, and tried to calm my rattled nerves. I needed to think, to strategize. Emily might think she was playing chess, but honey, I invented the damn game. The next day, I pretended like nothing had happened. I baked her favorite lemon bars, humming a little tune as I did. I knew she'd be back. She always came back for the lemon bars, and more importantly, to check if her manipulation was working. And sure enough, there she was, all smiles and fake contrition.
Grandma, I'm so sorry about yesterday, she chirped, grabbing a lemon bar before the plate even hit the table. I was just stressed about things. You know how it is. Oh, I do, sweetie, I said, offering her a cup of tea. Life can be so complicated, especially when you're trying to manage so many things at once. I made sure to emphasize manage. The afternoon was filled with more of the same saccharine apologies and probing questions. I played the confused, slightly addled grandma to perfection, occasionally forgetting what she was talking about or mistaking her for her mother. It drove her absolutely crazy. I could see it in the twitch of her eye, the way her smile tightened around the edges. That evening, after she left, I went to work. I had a little plan brewing, a little scheme of my own. You see, Emily had gotten a little too comfortable talking on her cell phone, always whispering, always stepping outside for privacy. I figured she was confiding in someone about her grand plan to fleece me, and I wanted to know who and what that plan entailed. I remembered that old tea tin I kept on the top shelf, the one with the floral pattern and the slightly dented lid. I hadn't used it in ages, not since Harold passed. Inside, nestled amongst the dusty tea bags, was a small, voice-activated recorder I'd bought years ago to tape a phone call with a particularly aggressive telemarketer. Never ended up using it for that, but I knew it still worked. I carefully placed it in the living room, hidden inside a decorative cushion. The next day, I acted completely normal, offering Emily tea and conversation. I knew she would eventually spill the beans on a call. It took a couple of days, but finally, my patience paid off. Emily, thinking she was alone, stepped out onto the porch with her iPhone and launched into a hushed conversation. No, she's still being difficult. I told you she's being stubborn about signing the power of attorney, but I'm wearing her down. She's getting senile. It's only a matter of time before she'll sign the papers. Then I can refinance the house and consolidate her debts. Refinance my house? Consolidate my debts? Honey, I haven't had a debt in 30 years. The only thing I owed money on was my property tax, and I had a payment plan set up with the county. The audacity. I listened intently, my blood boiling as I heard her outline her entire scheme. She planned to drain my bank accounts, take out loans in my name, and eventually sell the house and stick me in some facility. Yeah, I know it sounds bad, she continued, but she's old, Liam. She doesn't need all this money. And let's be honest, what's she gonna do with it? Buy more porcelain cats? I deserve this, after everything I've had to put up with. Porcelain cats? I'll have you know those were limited edition Hummel, Sleety, and priceless. When she finally hung up, I waited a few minutes, then casually walked onto the porch. Emily, dear, would you mind helping me with something inside? My back is acting up again. You know how the arthritis gets. Back inside, I made sure Emily was occupied in the kitchen, ostensibly helping me find my arthritis cream. As soon as her back was turned, I retrieved the cushion and extracted the recorder. My hands were shaking as I pressed play. And there it was, her voice, clear as a bell, outlining her entire despicable plan. I felt a surge of triumph. I had her. I walked into the kitchen, a smug little smile playing on my lips. Emily, honey, I think we need to have a little chat. I held up the recorder. I believe this belongs to you, or rather, it contains something that belongs to me. She turned, her eyes widening in surprise. Grandma, what is that? Oh, just a little something I picked up. You wouldn't believe what people leave lying around these days. I think you should hear it. I pressed play again, but instead of Emily's voice, all that came out was static. A high-pitched, ear-splitting screech filled the kitchen. I pressed stop,
Then play again. More static. My heart sunk. I looked at Emily, my triumphant smile faltering. She smirked. A slow, knowing, utterly terrifying smirk. Did you really think I was that stupid, Grandma? I knew you were recording me. I found your little device a few days ago. Don't you think I'd be prepared? All I did was simply record over the original file. She sauntered towards me, her eyes gleaming with malicious pleasure. You see, Grandma, you may think you're so clever, so cunning, but you're just an old woman clinging to the past. And the past, she leaned in close, her breath hot on my ear, is about to catch up with you. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through my skin. I had played right into her hands. Had she completely outmaneuvered me?
Well, ain't this a fine kettle of fish, I muttered, adjusting my floral scarf as I sat in the sterile courtroom. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish and desperation, mostly mine if I was being honest with y'all. I'd worn my best navy suit, the one I usually reserve for funerals, figuring it was appropriate for the death of my financial independence. Before me sat Judge Thompson, a man whose face looked like it had been carved from granite. Across from me, Emily, looking like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, and her lawyer, a young buck with a smug grin plastered on his face. I swear he reeked of arrogance and cheap cologne. Probably thinks he's the cat's pajamas. Mrs. Parker, Judge Thompson said, his voice echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged room. You've presented a challenge to the validity of the will presented by your granddaughter, Emily Carter. On what grounds are you contesting this document? I straightened my back. Arthritis be damned. Your Honor, this will is a forgery. My granddaughter manipulated me, exploited my trust, and then she stole my identity. That document is not my true will. It's a product of coercion and fraud. Emily dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. The little drama queen. Her lawyer, Mr. Smug, rose to his feet. Your Honor, with all due respect, Mrs. Parker's claims are baseless. We have a legally sound document, witnessed and notarized, bearing Mrs. Parker's signature. We also have a report from Dr. Albright confirming Mrs. Parker's mental competency at the time of signing. That damn Dr. Albright. I should have known better than to trust that snake oil salesman. He was always pushing those memory supplements too. Probably getting a kickback from them. I want to call Mrs. Agnes Miller to the stand, Your Honor. Agnes, bless her heart, was my neighbor and had seen Emily's controlling behavior firsthand. Objection, Your Honor, Mr. Smug said smoothly. Mrs. Miller's testimony is irrelevant. We are dealing with the legality of a signed document. Mrs. Miller's opinions are simply that, opinions. Judge Thompson sighed. I'll allow it, but keep it brief, Mrs. Parker. Agnes shuffled to the stand, looking nervous but determined. She testified about Emily's constant presence at my house, how she isolated me from my friends, how she seemed to always be hovering, watching, controlling. She wouldn't even let Helen choose her own tea, Agnes exclaimed, her voice trembling slightly. Earl Grey was Helen's favorite, but Emily kept buying that herbal stuff, said it was better for her. Emily rolled her eyes. Mr. Smug looked bored. I wanted to scream. Then it was their turn. Mr. Smug called the notary, a nervous little man who swore he remembered me being perfectly lucid when I signed the will. He said I seemed happy even. The liar. I bet Emily paid him handsomely to perjure himself. And then the hammer blow. Your Honor, Mr. Smug said, his voice dripping with satisfaction, we would like to present evidence that Mrs. Parker signed this will of her own free will without any coercion whatsoever. He produced a video. On the screen, there I was, sitting at my dining room table. Emily was filming me with her iPhone.
Grandma, are you sure you want to sign this new will? You understand that it leaves everything to me, right? I looked at the camera, and a small, forced smile crept onto my face. Yes, sweetie, I said, my voice sounding strangely detached. I understand perfectly. I want you to have everything. You deserve it. The video ended. The courtroom was silent. I stared at the screen, horrified. I remembered that day. Emily had given me a cup of tea, said it would help me relax. Looking back, I bet she had slipped something into it, something to make me compliant, agreeable. But how could I prove it? I felt like I was drowning. Mr. Smug approached the bench, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Your Honor, as you can see, Mrs. Parker was under no duress. She signed the will willingly and knowingly. We respectfully request that the court uphold the validity of the will. Judge Thompson looked at me, his expression unreadable. Mrs. Parker, do you have any further evidence to present? I looked around the courtroom, my gaze landing on Emily, who was now openly smirking. All the fight seemed to drain out of me. I was beaten, outsmarted, humiliated. No, I wouldn't let her win. Not completely. I may have lost this battle, but the war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I looked at Emily, my eyes narrowed, a new kind of determination hardening my gaze. She may think she's won, but Grandma still has a few tricks up her sleeve. But what could I possibly do now? I was out of money, out of options, seemingly out of time. My Social Security wouldn't even cover the cost of an attorney. Was there any way for Helen Parker to reclaim her life?
Well, crap. I mumbled under my breath, more to myself than anyone else. The air in that courtroom felt thick enough to choke on, heavy with Emily's smug victory and my utter failure. The smell of stale coffee from the morning's proceedings hung in the air, mingling with the faint scent of Judge Thompson's Old Spice aftershave, a smell that usually comforted me, reminding me of my late husband, George. But today, it just felt wrong. I watched Emily, that little viper, exchanging triumphant smiles with her slick lawyer, Mr. Hawthorne. He looked like a snake oil salesman in his expensive suit, all polished charm and empty promises. Back in my day, lawyers had some semblance of integrity. Now, they're all ambulance chasers and charlatans. Wouldn't you agree, sweeties? Judge Thompson, bless his heart, looked genuinely uncomfortable. I'd known him for years. We used to play bridge at the community center before my arthritis got too bad. He knew I wasn't senile. He knew something was rotten in Denmark, but his hands were tied. The law is the law, after all. As the courtroom began to buzz with the murmurs of the gallery, I could feel my face burning with shame. My friends from the church were there, their faces etched with pity. Even Mildred, that gossipy old hen, looked genuinely concerned. They all knew what that house meant to me. It wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was a lifetime of memories, a sanctuary, the place where I raised my children, where George and I celebrated our 50th anniversary. Now, thanks to Emily, it was as good as gone. That's when it really hit me, like a punch to the gut. All those years of scrimping and saving, of pinching pennies and forgoing luxuries, all for nothing. I had envisioned leaving that house to my children, a legacy of love and security. Instead, I was about to be out on the street, dependent on the kindness of others. Social Security barely covers my medical bills these days, let alone rent in Atlanta. And the worst part? I had done it to myself. My own blind love for Emily had led me down this path. Suddenly, I remembered when Emily was a little girl, about 7 or 8. She had broken my favorite porcelain doll, a precious heirloom from my grandmother. I was heartbroken, but when I saw the genuine remorse in her eyes, I forgave her instantly. "Accidents happen, sweetie," I had said, scooping her into a hug. "It's just a doll." That's who I am. I always gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that's my fatal flaw. But this wasn't a broken doll. This was my life.
And Emily hadn't just broken it, she had systematically dismantled it, piece by piece, with cold, calculated precision. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed, jolting me back to reality. Judge Thompson was leaving the bench, his face still etched with a hint of regret. Emily was gathering her things, her smirk widening as she caught my eye. She mouthed the words, "Thank you, Grandma," before turning and sashaying out of the courtroom, Mr. Hawthorne trailing behind her like a loyal puppy. That was it, the final straw. Hot tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. Not tears of sadness, but tears of pure, unadulterated rage. I stood up, my hands trembling, and took a shaky breath. I thought about my parents and their generation. They survived the Great Depression, World War II. I could feel their strength coursing through my veins. I may be old, honey, but I'm not dead yet, and I'll be damned if I let that little hussy walk all over me. I thought about George, watching me from above, his eyes filled with disappointment. He always said I was too trusting, too naive. "You see the best in everyone, Helen," he'd say. "Sometimes you need to be a little more cunning." Well, George, honey, I'm about to take your advice. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and straightened my shoulders. The tears stopped as quickly as they'd started. The pitying glances from my friends no longer stung. Instead, they fueled my resolve. I may have lost the battle in that courtroom, but the war was far from over. Emily might have thought she had outsmarted me, but she had underestimated one thing: a grandmother's love and a grandmother's wrath. I had given her everything, but now she was going to learn what Grandma's revenge really meant. The problem was, how? I knew she had been taking the money out of my account using Zelle and Venmo. She was very good at hiding the transactions, and that damned phantom factor that kept saying I was losing my mind. It had helped her case considerably. I needed a plan, a foolproof strategy that would allow me to reclaim my life and teach Emily a lesson she would never forget. But how could I do that with no money, no resources, and seemingly no options? Was this the end for Helen Parker?
Well, shitfire, I muttered under my breath, just loud enough for the busybody behind me to give me a withering look. Good. Let them all think I was some doddering old fool. Let them think I was defeated. Underneath, I was a volcano getting ready to erupt. The judge, that young buck with the slicked back hair, banged his gavel one last time. Case closed. Ms. Emily Carter is hereby granted full control of Ms. Helen Parker's financial and healthcare decisions. Emily, the little viper, gave me a saccharine smile from across the courtroom. Her lawyer, that snake oil salesman, practically preemed. I swear I saw him wink at her. The gall. I slumped further into my chair, pretending to be utterly crushed. My shoulders drooped, my hands trembled just so. I even let out a little whimper for good measure. I could practically feel their smug satisfaction radiating across the room. Inside, I was screaming. 72 years I'd lived. 72 years of hard work, sacrifice, and careful planning, reduced to this by my own granddaughter. The one I bounced on my knee, the one I taught to bake cookies, the one I loved. And now she was picking over my bones like a vulture. I let them have their moment, let them bask in their victory. They thought they'd won, you see. They thought that because they had manipulated the legal system, because they'd played on my age and that damned phantom factor, Dr. Klein's little pet name for what he probably thought was me losing my marbles, the one he wrote about to the court, that they had somehow broken me. But they were wrong. Dead wrong. As I sat there, seemingly defeated, my mind was racing. I replayed every moment, every transaction, every carefully crafted lie that Emily had spun. I remembered the way she'd looked at me, her eyes wide and innocent as she asked me to help her with a few bills.
I remembered the countless times she'd borrowed my credit card, promising to pay me back. She never did, of course. I thought about my checkbook, how I hadn't used it in years. Everything was electronic now. These damn kids in their Zelle and Venmo. They thought we old folks were too stupid to understand it. And maybe some were, but not me. I had learned enough to know that Emily was siphoning funds from my Wells Fargo account faster than I could say Social Security. I had to admit, she was clever. She'd learned my passwords, intercepted my mail, even changed my phone number so she could get the verification codes. She was a master manipulator, a wolf in sheep's clothing. But she'd made one fatal mistake. She underestimated me. She thought that because I was old, because I had arthritis, because I sometimes forgot where I put my reading glasses, that I was helpless. She thought that because I loved her, I would forgive her anything. Honey, let me tell you something. There's nothing more dangerous than a cornered grandmother. We may look frail, we may seem harmless, but we have a lifetime of experience, a wealth of knowledge, and a stubbornness that would make a mule blush. And I, Helen Parker, was about to unleash all of it on Emily. As I slowly rose from my chair, I straightened my back, squared my shoulders, and looked directly at Emily. Her smile faltered slightly, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. Good. Let her see that the fight was far from over. "Don't get too comfortable, sweetie," I said, my voice low and steady. "This ain't over till the fat lady sings. And honey, I'm just warming up." I turned and walked out of the courtroom, leaving Emily and her slimy lawyer to stew in their ill-gotten gains. The pitying glances from the onlookers no longer bothered me. In fact, they fueled me. Outside, the Atlanta sunshine felt warm on my face. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with fresh air. I had no money, no resources, and seemingly no options. But I had something far more powerful. I had a burning desire for justice. I wanted my life back, and I was willing to do whatever it took to get it. But how? How could I possibly fight back against someone who had already outsmarted me? Someone who had the legal system on their side? Someone who was, after all, my own granddaughter? Could Helen Parker, a 72-year-old widow with nothing but a sharp mind and a whole lot of grit, possibly recover from this devastating blow?
Damn it all to hell. I sank onto the porch swing, the aged wood groaning beneath me in protest. The swing set was probably older than Emily was, truth be told. I stared out at Mimosa Drive, the same street I'd lived on for 40 years. 40 years of trimming rose bushes, attending neighborhood potlucks, and knowing everyone's name and their dog's name. Now I felt like a stranger. The courtroom defeat replayed in my mind like a broken record. Her smug face, that snake oil salesman of a lawyer, my own blood, turning on me like that. The betrayal was a physical ache, a knot of pain in my chest that wouldn't loosen. I could almost smell the cheap cologne that weasel lawyer was wearing. Something overly citrusy, probably to compensate for his rotten personality. Back in my day, family meant something. You looked out for each other. You respected your elders. Now, it's all about the almighty dollar. These young whippersnappers think they can just walk all over you, especially when you're on a fixed income. I felt the familiar twinge of arthritis in my knees as I shifted on the swing. Getting old wasn't for sissies, that's for sure. Every morning, it was like a new part of my body decided to stage a protest. My doctor kept trying to get me on some newfangled medicine, but I'm old-fashioned. I still believe in a good cup of tea and a little bit of sunshine is the best medicine. Although, right now, even Earl Grey couldn't lift my spirits. The silence of the afternoon was only broken by the distant hum of a lawnmower and the chirping of the birds in my overgrown azalea bushes. I really needed to get out there and prune those things.
But right now, even clipping flowers felt like an insurmountable task. I thought about all the things I'd given Emily, the ballet lessons, the summer camps, the brand new car when she turned 16, even though I couldn't really afford it. I'd always justified it to myself. She was my granddaughter, and I wanted her to have the best. I wanted her to have the things I never had. Foolish, wasn't I? And for what? So she could drain my bank account, steal my identity, and leave me with nothing? The gall of that girl, the audacity. I was too trusting, too willing to see the best in people. That's what happens when you get old, I guess. You get soft. You start to believe that everyone has a good heart deep down. Bullshit. I sighed, the sound heavy with despair. What was I gonna do? My Social Security was gone, my savings were gone, my credit was ruined. I couldn't even get a damn credit card to buy groceries. I'd tried calling Wells Fargo, hoping maybe, just maybe, there was something they could do. But they just kept giving me the roundaround, transferring me from one department to another until I wanted to scream. It was all automated recordings and robotic voices. Nobody cared. I closed my eyes, picturing my checkbook, now utterly useless. I opened my eyes again and saw Jerry, my neighbor from across the street, waving frantically. Jerry was a nice man, always willing to lend a hand. A retired electrician. He was always tinkering with something in his garage. He had this weird fascination with ham radios, talking about frequencies and antennas and things that went completely over my head. He was practically jogging across the street, holding something small and rectangular in his hand. As he got closer, I could see it was a USB drive. He was beaming. "Helen, Helen," he called out, his voice raspy from years of smoking. "I think I might have something that can help you." He reached my porch, a little out of breath. "I heard what happened at the courthouse, Helen. That Emily, well, let's just say she always struck me as a bit of a piece of work." He paused, catching his breath. "Anyway, I was doing some tinkering on my computer the other day, and I came across something that might be of interest to you." He held out the USB drive. It's complicated, but I think it might have something to do with her finances. Maybe even some illegal activities. He cleared his throat. "I wouldn't get your hopes up too high, Helen. It could be nothing. But, well, I thought it was worth a shot." I took the USB drive from his hand, my fingers trembling slightly. It was small, insignificant, but in that moment, it felt like the key to my salvation. What does Jerry have to do with this?
Well, bless his heart, I said, turning the little USB drive over in my hand. "Jerry, you're a godsend, sweetie. But what in the world were you doing that led you to this?" He shuffled his feet, looking down at my rose bushes. "It's a long story, Helen, and probably boring as all hell. You know I've always been a bit of a tech head. Back in my day, I was fixing radios when the other kids were playing baseball." He chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. "Now I mostly just tinker with my computer, try to keep up with these young whippersnappers and their internet thingamajigs." I raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to get to the point. Jerry had a tendency to ramble, especially when he was nervous, and right now he looked like a cat caught in the cookie jar. "Well," he continued, "a few years ago I got this fancy new scanner, one of those all-in-one deals, you know, it scans, prints, faxes, the whole shebang. But the thing is, it automatically uploads backups of everything to the cloud. Some kind of security feature, I guess, meant to protect against viruses and hard drive crashes." He paused, running a hand through his thinning gray hair. "Anyway, a few weeks ago I was scanning some old family photos, you know, trying to digitize them before they crumble to dust. And wouldn't you know it, my scanner glitched out, started making this awful buzzing noise like a swarm of angry bees. I had to unplug the damn thing to get it to stop. "Get to the point, Jerry," I said gently, but with a touch of impatience. The hope that had fluttered in my chest was starting to fade. Right. Sorry, Helen. Well, it turns out when the scanner glitched, it somehow triggered a backup. And because it's always running in the background, it recorded everything that was happening at that moment. He took a deep breath. And what was happening at that moment, Helen, was you and Emily at the courthouse. That day you signed over your house? My jaw dropped. "You're telling me you have a recording?" He nodded, his eyes wide. "A full recording, Helen. Audio and video of everything that happened in that notary's office. Every word, every signature, the whole shebang." My heart leaped. This couldn't be real. It was too good to be true. But the notary was in on it, Jerry. She'll lie through her teeth. "Doesn't matter, Helen," he said, his voice suddenly firm. "I saw the file dates, the timestamps. The notary's computer wasn't even turned on at the time you were there. My scanner picked up everything, clear as a bell, before she even got there that morning." I grabbed his hand, my arthritis screaming in protest, but I didn't care. "Jerry, this is incredible. This could be it. This could be the proof I need." He squeezed my hand back, a rare smile spreading across his face. "I told you I might have something, Helen. I may be an old fool who spends too much time tinkering with computers, but I'm not blind. I saw how that Emily was treating you. It wasn't right. No granddaughter should treat her grandma like that, especially not after all she's done for her." Relief washed over me, so profound it almost brought me to my knees. "Jerry," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you." "No thanks needed, Helen," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Just glad I could help. Now, let's get this USB drive to your lawyer. Maybe we can finally put a stop to that little gold digger once and for all." I watched him walk back across the street, his shoulders a little straighter, his step a little lighter. Jerry, my quirky, tech-obsessed neighbor, might just be the hero I needed. But a nagging thought still lingered in the back of my mind. The notary was in on it. Emily was too confident. The whole situation stank worse than week-old shrimp. What crucial information, buried deep in that recording, did Jerry manage to capture without even realizing its significance? Well, shitfire, the next day at court was like something out of a bad movie. I was so nervous, my hands were shaking so badly I nearly spilled my Earl Grey all down my good Talbot suit. I could smell the faint aroma of Jerry's cheap cologne as he stood beside me, bless his heart. Emily, of course, was there, looking smug as ever, flanked by that weasel of a lawyer. I swear he looked like he'd been carved from a block of ice. She didn't even glance my way, just kept whispering something to him, probably about how she was going to buy a new yacht with my money. The audacity. My lawyer, bless his soul, he may have looked like a rumpled bulldog, but he was sharp as a tack. He led Jerry to the stand, and I could practically feel Emily's gaze burning holes in the back of my head. "Mr. Abernathy," my lawyer began, his voice booming through the courtroom, "can you please tell the court what you discovered while assisting Mrs. Parker with some technical difficulties?" Jerry cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and started talking about cloud storage and IP addresses. You know, all that tech mumbo-jumbo that makes my head spin. I could see the judge, a young whippersnapper who probably thought I belonged in a rocking chair, was starting to look bored. Emily was practically preening, like a cat who'd just swallowed a canary. Then Jerry dropped the bomb. "I was able to recover a recording," he said, his voice suddenly clear and strong. "A recording of a conversation between Miss Emily Parker and Mr. Henderson, the notary." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Emily's face turned a shade of green I didn't know existed. My lawyer, bless his soul, he may have looked like a rumpled bulldog, but he was sharp as a tack.
He led Jerry to the stand, and I could practically feel Emily's gaze burning holes in the back of my head. "Mr. Abernathy," my lawyer began, his voice booming through the courtroom, "can you please tell the court what you discovered while assisting Mrs. Parker with some technical difficulties?" Jerry cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and started talking about cloud storage and IP addresses. You know, all that tech mumbo-jumbo that makes my head spin. I could see the judge, a young whippersnapper who probably thought I belonged in a rocking chair, was starting to look bored. Emily was practically preening, like a cat who'd just swallowed a canary. Then Jerry dropped the bomb. "I was able to recover a recording," he said, his voice suddenly clear and strong, "a recording of a conversation between Miss Emily Parker and Mr. Henderson, the notary." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Emily's face turned a shade of green I didn't know existed. My lawyer nodded to Jerry, and he fiddled with a USB drive for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the recording started, and there it was. Emily's voice, clear as a bell, but dripping with venom. "You understand, Mr. Henderson," she said, her tone hard and cold. "If you don't sign these documents, things could get difficult for your family. Your daughter's got a bright future ahead of her. It would be a shame if something were to happen to her scholarship." The blood drained from my face, the venom in that girl's voice. I knew she was ruthless, but to threaten an innocent man like that? The air in the courtroom felt thick, heavy with the weight of her betrayal. Mr. Henderson's voice, weak and trembling, came next. I don't want any trouble. Just tell me where to sign." I glanced at Emily. She was staring straight ahead, her face a mask of defiance, but I could see the tremor in her hands. She knew she was caught. When the recording stopped, the courtroom was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Even the judge looked stunned. My lawyer turned to the judge, his eyes blazing. "Your Honor, this recording provides irrefutable proof that Miss Parker coerced Mr. Henderson into signing those documents through threats and intimidation. This is fraud, plain and simple." Emily's lawyer, Iceman, finally spoke. "Your Honor, this is all circumstantial. There's no way to verify the authenticity of this recording." That's when Jerry chimed in again, bless his cotton socks. "Actually," he said, "I can verify the authenticity. I have the metadata, the IP addresses, everything. I even managed to trace the calls to the cell towers nearby using a software my friend designed years ago. It's normally used to find lost iPhones or track stolen cars, but I figured it could come in handy." Iceman sputtered, but Jerry just kept going, rattling off numbers and technical terms that went way over my head, but I could see the judge was listening, really listening. Finally, the judge spoke, his voice firm and decisive. "Miss Parker, in light of this new evidence, I am immediately revoking your control over Mrs. Parker's assets. Furthermore, I am ordering a full investigation into your financial activities. I also want the local sheriff's office to seize every single document and electronic device related to this case. This is not a request, ma'am." I almost wept. Relief washed over me in a tidal wave. It was over. Finally, it was over. Emily glared at me, her eyes filled with pure, unadulterated hatred. "You haven't won, Grandma," she hissed. "This isn't over." But I just smiled. "Oh, sweetie," I said, "it's just beginning." As they led Emily away, I couldn't help but wonder, would Emily face justice for her crimes?
Well, isn't that a fine how do you do? Here I am, back on my porch, sipping my Earl Grey, Twinings, naturally, none of that cheap stuff, watching them lead Emily away, handcuffs gleaming in the Atlanta sunshine. You'd think I'd be doing a jig, wouldn't you? Finally, that little viper was getting what she deserved. But truth be told, honey, there's hollowness that settles in your bones when you see someone you raised, someone you poured your heart and soul into, reduced to that. Doesn't excuse her actions, not one bit, but it stings all the same. The police car pulled away, tires crunching on the gravel. I watched it until it was just a glint of sunlight on metal disappearing down the street. Jerry, bless his heart, came bustling up the walk. "Helen, are you all right? You look pale." "Just tired, Jerry. Dog-tired. This whole ordeal has taken it out of me." I managed a weak smile. "But thank you. I don't know what I would have done without you. You and that wizardry of yours." He chuckled. That warm, comforting sound I'd grown to depend on these past months. "Just happy to help, Helen. Emily was playing with fire, and I just provided the matches." He sat down in the rocking chair next to mine, the familiar creak a welcome sound. We sat in silence for a few minutes, just watching the birds flit around the bird feeder. I'd need to refill that soon. Small things. Life going on even after the storm. Then a car pulled up, an unmarked sedan, the kind the FBI uses in movies. A man in a plain suit got out, flashed a badge, and walked towards us. My stomach clenched. What now? "Mrs. Parker?" he asked, his voice polite but firm. "Yes, that's me." "Detective Miller, I'd like to ask you a few more questions, if you don't mind." Jerry stood up, his back straightening. "Is there a problem, Detective? Mrs. Parker has been through quite enough." Detective Miller gave him a polite nod. "Just routine, sir. I assure you this won't take long." He turned back to me. "We're still digging through Emily's records, Mrs. Parker, and we've found some concerning patterns. It seems she may not have been operating alone." My heart sank. I knew it. I knew that little schemer wasn't smart enough to pull something like this off on her own. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We've identified several other elderly individuals whose accounts show similar irregularities. Transfers, withdrawals, new credit cards opened, all pointing to potential identity theft and fraud." He paused, his eyes meeting mine. "It appears your granddaughter may have been part of a larger operation, Mrs. Parker, one targeting vulnerable seniors." The air suddenly felt thick, heavy. I could barely breathe. This wasn't just about me and Emily anymore. This was bigger, much bigger. "Other seniors?" I repeated, my voice trembling. "You mean she was doing this to other people too?" He nodded grimly. "It appears so. We're still investigating, but it's likely there are others involved. People who prey on the elderly, draining their savings, stealing their identities. It's a sickening business." My blood ran cold. Back in my day, you respected your elders. Now these vultures circled, waiting for their chance to pick us clean. This wasn't just about my stolen money or my violated trust. This was about protecting the vulnerable, the people on fixed incomes, the ones who'd worked hard their whole lives and deserved to live out their golden years in peace. A surge of anger, hotter and fiercer than anything I'd felt during the trial, coursed through me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Emily was just the tip of the iceberg. "Detective," I said, my voice regaining its strength. "Tell me everything you know. I want names, dates, everything. I'm not going to sit here and let these monsters get away with this." He looked at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. Then a slow smile spread across his face. "I was hoping you'd say that, Mrs. Parker." He pulled out a small notebook and a pen. "Let's start with what we found on her laptop." As I listened to the detective detail the extent of Emily's treachery, a new resolve hardened within me. This wasn't just about getting my money back anymore.
It was about protecting others from the same fate. I might be a 72-year-old widow with arthritis and a penchant for Earl Grey, but I wasn't about to let these criminals get away with targeting my generation. Hell no! The fight was just beginning. But what other dangers awaited me, honey, as I sought justice, not just for myself, but for the others?